Something is wrong with internet providers in India or Cloudflare. I don't know which party is at fault, but because of that reason exactly, yesterday I wasted more than an hour basically on a call with one of the customers. And the reason I say that is wasted is because there was no solution found except for this one tweet which I posted on Twitter yesterday and a few hypotheses on what is going wrong. So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about what this tweet is exactly, what happened, and where is the fault between Cloudflare and the ISP which he's using. It's gonna be a little bit technical, so stick with me over here. I will use a little bit of diagrams and things to make you understand it better. But the TLDR of the video is I still don't know what the issue is. So if you are looking for a big surprise, I just gave you right there. But you will learn things in this video, starting with how I debug this issue in the first place on the call with this user. So anyway, before getting on the call, before getting on the video, you have to understand a few things about what the issue is exactly, and let me tell you about it. So learn.codasgyan.com is one of the websites which is built on top of Fermion's infrastructure, right? And if you don't know about Fermion, it allows you to build things like this where, let's say if you want to have your own platform like this one where you are selling courses, you're creating coding labs, you are doing a lot of assessments without the infrastructure headache. So you can use Fermion to build something like that, live classes, accept payments and so on. So CodasGyan is one of the customers we have at Fermion that uses Fermion's infrastructure. And one of the users of CodasGyan complained that, hey, I'm not able to play back the videos, right? So what was happening is that when this user would come on the website and then let's say they clicked on this first video over here, this would just keep on spinning. Right? So right now it will spin and it will start playing for me. But for that specific user, it just kept on spinning and spinning and there was no resolution. It just kept on going that way. Occasionally, what he will tell us is that if I click on this, you see that loader over here, which just appears for a few seconds and then, the actual video comes up or the actual article comes up. So instead of the actual thing, it would just be stuck on the default loader page, right? So this was the initial observation. That was it. Now, when I talked to this user, I took a few screenshots within the call. Now this one might not be very clear, but let me see if I can find a few better screenshots. So here are some of the more screenshots from that specific call, and you can see what's going on over here. I'll just quickly jump into a few observations. Is first of all, you see the segment-1.ts, which is the HLS playback part of the video. It's taking more than 10 seconds, right? And even then the fetch request gets cancelled because we have timeouts in place. So it's extremely bad to load, first of all, like extremely slow, because this chunk is not more than like, I think 30-40 kbs in size, right? Or maybe like 100 kbs after compression. Similarly, over here also you can see that it's taking 15 seconds, for example, this chunk, 15 seconds to load, and even then it fails, actually, it doesn't load. So it's kept on trying and it's not loading. Finally, if you look at this screenshot, you will see that this API call which we have, this took 11 seconds, and API for once we know is not this slow, right? It's not slow at all. Most responses you will get under 500 milliseconds on the API which we use at Fermion, the backend call basically. So what's going on? What's happening? This is the computer in Gujarat, India, right? So this person is situated out of Gujarat in India, and we are trying to debug what's happening. Now, the way Fermion works, the way this whole thing, the whole architecture works, is that everything in our case specifically is behind Cloudflare infrastructure. So the first time you open websites, so for example, you say learn.codasgyan.com, what you're effectively doing is meeting up with the Cloudflare instances, right? So this range is Cloudflare IP range. If you go into the networks tab, hit refresh on this document now and click on this, you will see the first set of IP address which we get is from Cloudflare directly, right? So this is like Cloudflare, which is the initial thing. Now beyond Cloudflare, whatever happens, we don't really care, right? So what Cloudflare is doing in terms of calling APIs. Now this could be like an actual EC2 or whatever we are using as a backend. Then this could be an actual CDN or whatever we are using as a backend, or this could be an actual backend API system, whatever we are using as a backend, right? So it doesn't matter. The reason it doesn't matter is because we have health checks in place that keep on checking the latency and the uptime of the APIs, right? So anywhere else in the world when you are accessing it, let's say if you're not based out of Gujarat, you are from Delhi, right? Even if you are making this request from Delhi to Cloudflare, your stuff is working fine, right? Similarly, because I'm based out of Bangalore right now, it was pretty much the same thing for me also. I would just make a request, it would just work fine. And by the way, this is Codasgyan we are talking about still. So this endpoint in Gujarat was the only fault. Now, why is this the case? Well, you know how things actually work on internet is that once you have got this IP address, for example, it's not as simple as just, you just connecting to this IP address directly and downloading the data. There are a lot of multiple hops which sit in between, right? So if I do a simpler version of this in order to show you what I mean, let me get my terminal over here and let me use a command called as traceroute. Right? So if I do a traceroute of learn.codasgyan.com and let me just, I already have warp enabled. So if I do something like this, what you're going to see is that it starts a route on how the packets are flowing in your, access. So for example, when you're writing traceroute, when you're actually writing learn.codasgyan.com, how the information flows on the internet itself. So I did had to disable Cloudflare Warp for some reason. I don't know, like with Cloudflare Warp enabled, it just kept on showing me stars. So over here, you can see like how we are exactly reaching learn.codasgyan server, right? So it says like it has multiple addresses. So we have 2 A records for Cloudflare, but you see all these routers in between are the routers through which the traffic flows, right? So it's not as simple as you get the IP address and you just call it a day and you just connect with the Cloudflare directly. There are systems through which the network traffic flows, right? Before it actually reaches, there are routers basically through which the network traffic flows, which is something which you can inspect using a utility like traceroute. For example, if I do another traceroute of, let's say, google.com, and hit enter, you're going to see that it's able to give me how exactly it reaches google.com. So these are the routers which are sitting between this computer on which I am right now and Google. You can also do trace routing online. So if I do learn.codasgyan.com, with an online tool, it's going to use its external servers most likely, and it's going to show me how the trace routing looks like in this case. And the previous site which I was using did not work at all. So anyway, you can see on this site, DNS checker, you can see that this is how the traffic flows, right? Now the problem in this case most likely is, this is something which I don't probably know like what's going on wrong, is that one of these routers or one of these systems in between is bad, right? So this is like a bad system, which for some reason is only affecting traffic routed via Cloudflare. Because the reason I know this is because, as I wrote in the tweet also, any other website that's also using Cloudflare is also slow. So I asked him to open teamviewer.com also, and the moment he opened teamviewer.com, which also uses Cloudflare by the way, so if you go to its networks tab and inside this document, you will be able to see these, not this one, let me refresh. Over here, you can see these Cloudflare array and cache status headers, right? So this means, and the IP address was also owned by Cloudflare range. This website was also loading extremely slow for him. Furthermore, if you don't know about a very nice tool known as Cloudflare Warp, this is an interesting VPN. This is like a sort of a free VPN client which you can download. It's a lightweight thing, which is also something I had enabled just now. So you see over here, if I click on this, now my traffic is getting routed with Cloudflare, right? So if I go ahead and write now on this ifconfig.me. So what you're getting over here is, this is not my IP address. This is an IP address of Cloudflare server, right? So if you open this, I'm probably assuming this won't open, but yeah, this IP address does not belong to me. But anyway, you get the idea that this system over here, some of the router or something between in this routing space is wrong, right? Now this was not a this was not a browser problem, because I did figure out, like, try out in incognito and in a couple of other browsers, see if it makes any difference. This is also not a Fermion problem, because this networking layer of connecting the user from their own computer to Cloudflare is handled by ISP, so it's not our problem. This also likely is not a Cloudflare problem, but they would know the resolution. The reason I say this is likely not a Cloudflare problem also is because Cloudflare generally is working fine with other systems. So if you're accessing from other places or other cities, it's just working fine, because we are getting no complaints from any other user except for this one user in Gujarat. And this most likely, I think, it's also not a location problem. Now this is where, if you guys know something more than what I have told you, please feel free to comment down, because the moment he switches his network from Wi-Fi in home to mobile hotspot, the website starts working fine, right? So these packets probably are taking different routers or different path now. So it's not specific to location, like the Gujarat in India is specifically like it's a bad location for routing traffic through Cloudflare. But this is the basic diagnosis which I could do on my own, that there is some sort of connectivity fault over here in the routing space when the packets are flowing from, you know, Cloudflare to this user or this user to Cloudflare, right? And finally, this is also evident that Cloudflare Warp slows down speed 100 times, right? So what was happening is that this user showed me on fast.com. So if you go to fast.com, you can see your website connection speed. So he would show me that this is appearing to be 70, 80 Mbps, right? And fast.com is by Netflix, and Netflix does this speed transfer, I'm assuming, with AWS, because this page at least is hosted with AWS. So they're doing this transfer with AWS. But the moment he would turn on Cloudflare Warp, which I already have, by the way, right now. So if I disable this, the speed should ideally go a lot up, right? So you can see it was 110, not a lot up, but you can see like it's 120 now. So the point being that there is not a lot of drop in the speed over here, because Cloudflare Warp chooses a very nearby server for, you know, choosing as your VPN. That's why you can just keep on using it without realizing that you sort of have a VPN on. But in his case, the speed would drop from 70 Mbps to 600 kbps, which is a more than 100x speed drop. And right, and it's more than enough for, you know, creating an extremely shitty experience for somebody who's using a learning platform to learn something. But anyway, that's basically it. I know it's not a lot of information. There is no, you know, happy ending to the story yet, because we honestly haven't been able to figure out still. I have tagged a few people from Cloudflare and the Cloudflare dev teams also. We'll also raise a formal ticket around this, but this is a huge headache, because the problem is with Fermyon, every piece of technology, every piece of endpoint which we have right now on Fermyon is behind Cloudflare's infrastructure. And the problem is that the moment, one more thing, the reason I know that this is only a problem with Cloudflare is that the moment we removed this Cloudflare proxy from one of the CDNs which we use, which is Bunny CDN, by the way, the moment we removed this and enabled this direct access, this was super fast, right? This was super duper fast the moment we removed the orange proxy from the DNS. But we obviously had to get it back because we do a few WAF level checks with that. And it's generally better to keep Cloudflare in between in case, you know, somebody tries to be a script kiddie. But anyway, this is basically it. Do let me know in the comments if you know a better resolution or better hypothesis of why something like this could happen. Remember, the internet is 100% fine because I sat down with that user and he was able to play YouTube videos in 1080p. Everything is working smooth except for routes routed through Cloudflare's infrastructure. Extremely weird problem. Could be an ISP fault, could be a router fault in between. Let me know in the comments what do you think. That is all for this one. Leaving you with a cliffhanger more than a solution in this video. Help me out in this one. That's all for this video. I will see you in the next video really soon.